Excited to welcome Ben Johnson to share the game with us. Ben is the new head coach of the University of Minnesota. Johnson, who graduated from Minnesota in 2005, returns to his alma mater after spending 3 seasons at Xavier as an assistant coach. Johnson previously served as an assistant coach in Minnesota from 2013 to 18 and was a two-time captain during his playing career for the Gophers. Coach Johnson was also previously an assistant coach at Nebraska, Northern Iowa, Texas Pan America, and a graduate assistant at Dayton. Coach Johnson, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on and looking forward to it.
Yeah, exciting times for you, I know, and a lot going on. So I appreciate you taking some time, and I know this is going to be very valuable for coaches. So let's get right into it. What was the first thing you did when you got the job?
Oh, man. Take a deep breath, really. It was an exciting time, to say the least. Now, I just remember, when you get that phone call and you see Mark Coyle on your phone, it's going to go one of two ways, right? And I just remember saying, I'm going to know within the first 10 seconds of this phone call if it's going to go my way or not. And so you pick it up and you're just waiting to get that vibe or that reaction to figure out, all right, which side am I on here? And when he told me that they were narrowing in on me, it was just an overwhelming feeling. And so then I started calling a select few people just to kind of express my excitement and talk about the opportunity that I had. So it was a day I'll never forget, to say the least.
That's great. And I'm so happy to hear that one of the first things you did was to let other people know and to take a moment and celebrate. Because again, what a moment in your life. And I remember all those moments of first jobs or different things like that. It's just so exciting, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. And I know I didn't get here by myself. So there were definitely people that I wanted to call right away and thank, because without their help and guidance and opportunity, I wouldn't be here today. So that was really important to me. And then obviously you want to share news like that with people that get it and understand it and that you have a lot of love and admiration for. So it was good to thank those people and to let people know kind of this unbelievable opportunity that I've been given.
Extensive background. So again, prepared for the job. There's no question there with all your background, but in talking to some coaches about their first head coaching experience, what's unique about yours is that you're very familiar with the location and where you're going to have your first head coaching experience, which often isn't the case. And I got to think that's a huge advantage for you.
Oh, no question. It's been huge. I mean, even going back to, growing up, I grew up 15 minutes from campus. So, I lived Gopher basketball from, third grade all the way up, going to De La Salle and basically driving the same route, getting off at the same freeway exit, the whole deal. And then, to hire Dave Thorson, who was my high school coach, but also worked here for 4 years under Clem Haskins. The lay of the land, is something I'm very familiar with. And so that is without a doubt helped me. And it's kind of come full circle from being a recruited athlete to being a student athlete to being an assistant coach to now being a head coach, with a lot of familiar faces in the building, but just understanding the university, understanding the process, understanding kind of what works here, understanding the state has definitely helped me in this first couple weeks on the job for sure.
So once getting the job and getting beyond some of the excitement and all that initial stuff, then what are some of the first things that you're doing within that first week that you get the job? Give some coaches an impression of the most important things.
For me, it was the current roster, without a doubt. And I think the portal played a big role. Obviously, we've kind of seen how that's gone, but it was figuring out the roster and figuring out, okay, who's on board? Who do I need to convince? Who do I need to talk to? Who do I not have a chance with? Who would I like to stay? And just try to figure out that first, because then that affects your recruiting. You got to figure out, okay, what do I have? What do I need to get? So that took precedence right away, without a doubt. And it's still going on even now. But I think that first week that consumed me with, okay, figuring out where our guys even at. When are they going to become the campus? When can I start developing that relationship? When can we start talking about, philosophies and kind of what they want and what my vision is, to kind of map out the direction that we need to go recruiting wise and what holes and gaps we need to fill.
I don't think it surprises anyone to hear you say recruiting, but I think what's unique about what you're saying is it's really recruiting your current roster, which is a part of all coaches' job nowadays with the transfer portal and everything else that goes into it. So what are some of the things philosophically that you can share with players about your style that would, again, help them convince them to be able to stay to play for you?
Yeah, I think the big thing with me is I'm into core values. That's really, really important to me. I think that goes back to, being a former athlete and a former player, especially here, and kind of going through the process from both lenses as a student athlete that played and was recruited, and now, as an assistant coach and now as head coach. A lot of times coaches can say that, they can be like coach speak, but like we want to really live it, because I know the value in that locker room of when you're true to whatever it is that your core principles are. And so that was the first thing, to let these guys know kind of what I stood for, what our program is going to stand for. And that was kind of like the base. And for me, there's kind of two ways I looked at it. Trust is one of the core values that I hold near and dear to my heart. And that it kind of is full circle. They got to trust themselves as a player. They got to trust the work that they put in, that eventually over time it's gonna pan out. Kind of the cliche, trust the process. They got to trust me over time. They got to trust our staff that we're going to put them in the right position, athletically, socially, and academically, to be successful. And then they got to be, guys of integrity. I think that is a piece where if you want to win at the highest level, you've got to have the right character makeup. You've got to do the right things all the time, because I think there's a direct correlation. I think if you're sloppy off the floor, you're going to be sloppy on the floor. I think there's very few LeBron James, Kevin Durant that are so talented where, you can have distractions and still be really good. I think for our guys and for me, it goes hand in hand. If you're a mess and a disaster academically and socially, your game ain't going to be right, or it's not going to meet your level of expectation, and it's not going to beat my level and our team's level. And if you want to win big, as you know, you got to have, everything's got to work. It's got to fit. So integrity is a big piece. And then lastly, competitiveness. I got to have guys that are naturally competitive. And we're going to teach that every single day, that you got to fight for everything that you get. And I need guys that are willing to fight for everything I get. I think, cool guys lose, and we can't have a room full of cool guys. To me, cool is competing. And I think it goes back to just a life lesson where, we all want it to be great every single day, but we all know the older you get, the more responsibilities you have and the more expectations. And if you become a father and a parent, you have to fight every day, because if you don't, life ain't stopping. It's going to keep coming, and you got to find a way through good days and bad to keep progressing and getting better and succeed. And so I think that's really important is every day we got to compete. And so those are the three kind of core values. There's other values that I have with style of play, but like those are three. When we talk about recruiting, or we talk about a baseline of what guys that are going to stay on or come to our team have, it would definitely be those three.
That's tremendous. I'm so glad you shared that. And I want to dive deeper in a few of those topics, and also style of play philosophy. But I just want to go back to one thing that you said, which I think is fascinating. And it's the process of evaluating the current roster, because you really don't have much time to do that. You did some, I assume, in the preparation for the interview process, but can you talk a little bit about that without specific players being mentioned, but talk about, is it analytics? Is it game film? Is it conversations with peers or people around them? What are some of the things that go into your evaluation of the current returning roster?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because I do think you got to take a deep dive, in my opinion, the way I am. It's so valuable who you have in that locker room. And to me, especially first year coach at this level in this league, and then the way I want to do things here, that foundation is everything. And you got to make sure you get the foundation right to start. And so obviously you look at the analytics piece, you look at the numbers, you watch the film. That's important, and that goes without a doubt. You got to have good enough players. You got to have guys that are efficient, that can make plays, that translates. I think to me, that's the big thing, is like, okay, what does a player do that can translate to how we're going to play or our style of play? But then I think you got to go deeper. You got to, all right, you got to peel it back. Who is that kid? You got to ask the questions. What are they? How are they academically? How are they socially? Have there been issues? Are they going to fit? What type of locker room guy are they? You got to ask, the strength coach, how are they with you? The academic advisor, how are they with you? The former staff, if they're willing to share, what are the positives, the negatives, and it's really important because, like I said, they don't know me and I don't know them, right? And so I think it goes both ways. And in order for me to coach guys the way I want to coach them, I got to kind of understand what I'm getting into, and I got to understand, how they are and who they are. I think that's important as much as they understand who I am, and that's where you got to have it work. And I think every coach who takes over a job has got to make that tough call, because there's going to be some cases where a player might be good enough, but it can't just be that, because if they're good enough, but yet they're killing you in the locker room, it ain't going to work. And you're dealing with year one, just distractions, and you're not focused on, building that program. And so I think that was very big for me, and not to say that guys that aren't here are like that. But just, I think it worked out in a way where we're hitting the ground running with guys that are not only 2 feet in, but guys that are about, kind of what I'm about, what my staff's about, what we want this program to be built on. And that's exciting. It's hard to completely flip a roster, but then I think we got to flip our mindsets at the same time. We're able to now get it with guys that are quote unquote our guys, and quote unquote will kind of program it the way we want to from the start, and really try to build and take off from there. So it's been interesting, but I think it's worked out, and it's going to pan out for years to come.
No, absolutely. And it's safe to say that you've done a deeper dive on the players than they've done a deeper dive on you. So I'm curious then if part of it is like recruiting, where you're dealing with their champion, so to speak. It's a parent, their coach, whoever's really involved in their life. Is that part of the process for you as well at this point?
100%. And it goes back to your earlier question. I was fortunate to know a lot of people that are here at the university. So whether that's, people in different administrative roles, that could be, academically, that could be, whatever, all the different functions you have in the athletic department. So I was able to get a lot of intel and get from people that I trust. And I think that's huge, because as a new coach, you're not a lot of times afforded that. You might get input from person A or B, but they might be sided and they might have a certain feeling about a kid, or they might not know how you are as a person or a coach. So they might give you advice that's good, but might not be the best advice. Whereas I was very fortunate enough to lean on a bunch of people, not only on my staff, but throughout the athletic department, that knew me, that could say, hey, Ben, I'm telling you, hey, this is a kid you want to keep. Hey, I know, whatever, the numbers might not say it, or he didn't have, A, B, or C going this year on the court, but I'm just telling you, he's the type of kid that he gets it, or you give him a chance. And then you could also have it be like, hey, they'll shoot me straight, or we're going to let you make the decision, but knowing the direction you want to go, hey, we're going to kind of give you our take on whatever this situation. So that really, really helped me to have that type of information I could trust right away, because I know everywhere that's not always the case. Okay.
Coach, I know you've interviewed, you've been a well-respected assistant for a long time. I know you've interviewed for other jobs. So maybe give us a perspective. What would be the difference, if any, between a mid-major interview and a high-major interview? Are there different things that go into those processes?
I think there are. I've been fortunate enough for the last 3 years now to be in a position to get in front of an AD and a president and a search committee. I think, and I've kind of been at all different levels of it. I think at the lower levels, the one thing that stood out is a lot of times those are, just like I was, a first year AD or a new Intuit AD. So now they have totally different concerns. This I might be their very first hire. And obviously with basketball, it's probably going to be one of the more high profile hires on the campus. And so with that comes, a whole different set of eyes. You're getting hit, I'm sure, as they are as administrator, with the pressure of making sure they get their first hire right. And they want to get their first hire right. So it's kind of the process, I'm sure, is a little bit different on their end. And then I think, with this one, Mark's obviously, been a veteran AD in the game. So he's hired football, hockey, volleyball, basketball. It's just a different tone. Now the expectations and the profile of the job is obviously higher than a mid or a lower because of being in the Big Ten. But I think you definitely have, with experience comes everything. So I think that was something that probably stands out a little bit, just different angles from the AD standpoint. I think as far as just like line of questioning, it's pretty much the same, especially from a first year guy. They want to know your philosophy and want to know why you're the guy, why you're ready for it, and all that stuff. But, I would just say, like anything, there's a difference in a guy who's done it and has made hires before versus, hey, this is this AD's first hire. Is a little bit different.
Yeah, that's a really cool insight. And maybe wouldn't have thought of it that way. And that's cool to hear. And then I'm also curious, then you get hired. Do you get bombarded with people right away about potential jobs? Is that how it works? Because obviously you have a huge network.
You do. Yeah. And you always hear, oh man, I got, 500 text messages or this or that. And that stuff honestly is real. And if, you'd hear it and I'd be like, oh man, no way. But, you do. And literally, it just keeps coming. And you have to make a lot of tough calls as a head coach. I mean, there is a lot of honest conversations. You feel like, at least I did, that first 2 weeks, all I told people was no. And you feel like that. You feel like every day, all I'm doing is saying no, or can't, or but. And it messes you up a little bit because it does. You feel like the Grim Reaper. But at the same time, you have to realize, okay, I might only get one shot at this. And I have to do right by me. I have to do right by my administration, by the president, by the university. It's not personal. It's really not. And I think I've tried to, as assistant coach, I always try to look at it that way too, that it's not personal, whether I got a job or didn't get a job or tried to get a job, because I think each situation is different. You might be qualified for a quote unquote high major or Big Ten job, but if the situation or the demographic doesn't fit maybe what a coach thinks you bring, well, that might be all it takes to not land a position. And again, it does. And I wasn't saying some of these guys weren't qualified or were really good coaches or really good recruiters or, whatever you might be. They're all stars, but it's just the situation. And once you hire a guy, that determines the other two guys, and then the other thing is salary pool. I think now that's something where you could self-eliminate because you make X amount of money. And I could want to hire you, but maybe I couldn't afford it. Minnesota is different. Some schools have a crazy budget. I have a very good budget. But I do think that's real, where some guys, it's like the expectation, doesn't always meet kind of the availability, whether that's funds or role. And so, like I said, there's a lot of tough decisions. You definitely see this side of it, obviously, as a head coach, when you got to make the call. And you just got to hope that when you say no, you don't kill too many relationships or friendships, and that they hopefully understand. But it's hard because there's a lot of good coaches out there that can help programs.
Yeah, it's a good and a bad problem, right? To have that many people interested in wanting to work with you. And you've been on both sides of that. So I'm curious if you can provide a little bit, maybe of an understanding for coaches that are potentially looking for a job. What would be the best way, in your opinion, for them to approach that type of situation if they did want to reach out to you and just express that, hey, I'm available if you want me?
I think just that. I think, I'm a pretty open, transparent person. Like, I get it. I don't judge guys. It's got to work for both people. So I think just having that honest, open communication. I think too, if you have a pre-existing relationship with a guy, that obviously helps because, as you know, trust is huge. I think, the trust factor is for me probably right at the very top of the list with any position that I hire, because is that lighting bad? I think the trust factor is huge. So, anytime a guy is on the road and can meet a head coach or head coaches, I think that's big because it definitely plays a role. but I would think just that open, honest conversation to start it. It always goes well.
Coach, so you then hire a staff, and more so now you have to manage a staff as the head coach. So I'm curious, how does that process go about in terms of defining roles initially? Do you have a meeting with everyone and then you throw out kind of like best ideas and best things, and then you determine roles from there? Or do you have a good understanding before you hire them what their role is going to be?
Yeah. I have a pretty good understanding. I think that's one of the things that helped me probably the last 5 to 6 years as an assistant coach. I would always kind of try to have a philosophy book for this day. And within that philosophy book, obviously I would tweak it year to year. But I would have, under staff, so say assistant coach 1, 2, and 3, kind of their roles. And that's one thing that I kind of got from Xavier. Coach Steele does a great job of defining roles throughout the entire program. So we would always meet, in the fall, and you would have your kind of your responsibility sheet, and we would go through it, and we go through the entire book. But on that sheet, it would lay out, okay, Ben, this is what I'm in charge of this year, everything from recruiting to the finest detail to dealing with the training room and let them know, who's going to be available for practice, to anything outside of on the floor coaching. And so what I've done is I always took that as kind of like my model and my grid. And then for each job and the location, you kind of tweak, okay, the responsibilities and what I feel were important and what I feel like fit me. And so I was able to mold my staff, and I used that kind of as a cheat sheet. I knew exactly the things I was looking for, whether it was areas of recruiting as far as geography, whether it was personality, whether it was guys that this person, I need somebody that's really detail oriented that can focus in on X, Y, and Z in our program. That really helped me. And so then when I was able to get the guys that I wanted, we will definitely sit down as a staff in the fall and really detail out, okay, here is, assistant coach 1's responsibility, 2, 3, from strength and conditioning to academic support staff, to our GAs, to our operations, all the way down. I think the summer, we obviously will be organized, and they'll kind of have a pretty good idea as far as on the floor during our 8-week program and then recruiting. But it also gives me a time to figure out, okay, I was dead on. This guy is really good at this. I can keep him with this type of responsibility. Or, you know what? I found out that this guy is a little bit better than this. Let's flip this a little bit as far as responsibilities go. And then in the fall, like I said, we'll meet as an entire staff and get everybody on the same page. There's no secrets. And then that way, guys know exactly what they need to do. And I think it really helps us with organization. And it also helps with those guys being able to do the best job they can do. If it's not necessarily on your plate, you can still dive in it. But like, if you can push that off to somebody that's responsible for it, then let's do that so we can kind of keep it moving.
You mentioned the philosophy book, so we got to talk about that a little bit. Can you give us some perspective on some of the sections or some of the different things that kind of would help a coach outline a similar thing if they were planning that?
Yeah. So in my philosophy book, obviously, I'll have my core values and my beliefs as far as overall. And I talked about that with trust, integrity, competitiveness. And then I talk about my core values, or the values and the staple of what I want our program to be about, basically from a fan's perspective. Okay, so when a fan comes to a game, what are 3 things that I want them to walk away from that necessarily don't have to do with details of X's and O's? It's more of kind of a broad scape of, okay, here's kind of what Minnesota basketball needs to look like from the outside in. Talked about that, talked about my overall philosophy of how I want to play offensively, defensively. Talk about my staff makeup. In there, I will have the job description is kind of in generic form of, here's what I'm looking for, here's what I value, here's responsibilities for an assistant coach that works for us. And then talk about just recruiting, how we attack that. What are my beliefs on recruiting? So that way, when I meet down as a staff, it's pretty clear. All right, here's the type of kid we're looking for. Here's the type of style that I like, and then I think we'll win here. And then here's kind of the areas geographically that I think I want to really at least touch base on and make sure we're attacking, we're being really thorough in. It gives an academic breakdown, expectations of my student athletes, expectations of a staff, and how we want to attack the academics. Strength and conditioning, It gives a breakdown just of that, kind of our goals, what we want to get out of the weight room, why it's important, how we can build and develop our guys in that area with nutrition as well. And then just the overall, I think you got to talk about the social aspect. All right. When it goes into recruiting, here's why we want these type of kids, but socially, here's kind of the expectations, because I think that's real, and how you manage, whether it's social media. And, for us, there's 50 to 55,000 people that go to school here, and you're located in a major city. So you better be able to manage and have a game plan for the social aspect and how we're operating that, how we're policing that. And also, honestly, how we're developing that. How can we use the 18 Fortune 500 companies here to market and brand our guys? And I think the branding piece and the marketing piece is so important, not only for our program, but for each individual player, because they're getting hit with it. We might not want to admit it as a coach, but, schools and programs and family, they're talking to those kids about, how can you be marketed? How can you be branded? And I think we've got to have an approach that can answer those questions.
Well, I love it. I love so many things you said. I want to jump on a few of them. And the fan experience part, I think that's brilliant that that's accounted for in that way. Just great stuff. And then the other part you mentioned is obviously your players handling the environment and now being at a major program in a major city. Same question to you now. Do you have a mental health plan for yourself in terms of dealing with now all of a sudden all this extra pressure and attention that comes from being the head coach, but not just a head coach at a low major, you're at a high major as a head coach?
That's usually you brought that up because I was talking to a friend about that, and he was basically telling me, "Hey man, you have a lot of stuff covered here, but have you covered yourself? And do you have somebody that you can kind of be the buffer that you can either vent to, or that you can talk to problems that you have or issues that may come up?" And I answered, unfortunately, the answer was no. I've thought about it, but as of right now, I don't, but I know it is important. I preach to these guys about the mental aspect that they need to bring every single day and how that can help them become a really good player. And if I'm not taking my own thoughts and words and applying it to myself, it probably doesn't go far with them. So I need to do that. I haven't, but it's definitely something I do agree with you. I think all coaches should probably have that field at their disposal.
Well, it's definitely part of the process nowadays is learning how to manage yourself and just be self-aware of all the different things you go through. And to your point, I had someone later in my career that I found that had nothing to do with my program, and I could always call them and have an honest conversation, knowing it wouldn't go any farther, and just have some perspectives, again, an outsider perspective, and it was tremendous. But also in addition to that, obviously, like healthy eating, different types of workouts, different types of things. Because again, it's so easy as a head coach to justify removing those things from your life. Whereas an assistant, it was probably easier in a way to have those things in your life.
Well, and I think that is one thing, I've had some head coaches be unbelievable to me, whether it's, Tom Izzo, Matt Painter, Juwan Howard, guys in our Steve Peichel, guys in our league have reached out and been unbelievable. But then just talking to, Shaka Smart, just different coaches that have said just that you can't forget about yourself, and I think a big piece of that is the workout piece. Is we can get so consumed with this fast pace and you're always trying to do something that you forget to take care of your body. Well, if your body shuts down, it's going to be really hard to sustain your energy and your focus for an entire year. And then you're cheating your team, you're cheating your program. So I think as a coach, we always talk about nutrition and being in the best shape for players and conditioning. Well, if we're not doing that as a staff, then I think, we're kind of talking out of the both ends, and so I've really realized that not only is it a mental break to get away, to get a workout in, to get a sweat in, but it for me, I come up with a lot of stuff and a lot of ideas when I'm working out. And it's a way for me to escape it and get away. But more importantly, you're keeping your body healthy. And I think, getting sleep is important. Obviously, eating the right way is important, but getting that sweat in every day, I've learned it just manages my stress and it keeps me healthy.
Well, it's easy. I've talked about it before on the podcast with other coaches, this external pressure from media or other people about what their perception of a coach is. And you're absolutely right. You just got to be selfish and take care of you because you're going to do better ultimately for everyone else. And that's great. Coach, I want to build on something you said before, which I loved. Cool guys lose. Can you talk then about how you create this competitive culture within your program and within your practices, and give us some insights into some of the things that are going to build competitiveness?
I think the first thing that's worked for me is it starts with recruiting. I think, if you watch a kid in high school and there's something that bothers you about him in high school, or he doesn't quite have that competitive spirit that you want or at the level you think you need in high school, it ain't going to just turn on once he gets to you. I don't care how talented he is. I don't care all the potential that guy might have. I think for the most part, a lot of what you see recruiting is going to be a lot of what you get. And that's good and bad. But you have to have an eye for that. That to me is part of the evaluation process. It's not just can he dunk, can he block shots, can he rebound, but it's that whole thing of, all right, does he have that grit? Does he have that drive?
What are some of those things, Coach, in practice or in games that you would see and notice and say, hey, this is a competitive person, a competitive player? Let's focus on the positive side of it.
Body language, without a doubt. I watch that from the minute I walk in the gym. That's the first. I will literally stare at a dude in layups, on the bench, in timeouts, just how they walk around on the court. Their interaction with teammates with me is everything. How they talk to them. Good play, bad play. So you could be off the ball. If there's a turnover by your teammate on the other side, what's your reaction to that? What's your body language to that? Are you a thumb pointer or a finger pointer? Are you on that dude's ass all the time where you can tell like it rubs everyone the wrong way, or do you have that balance? How do you engage and interact with people, to me, is very telling. How you treat people outside of the court is very telling. If I watch you in the hallway or at the hotel or at a gym and you catch my eye, it's like, what is your interaction there? How do you carry yourself? Because I think that stuff translates, because that ultimately, in my opinion, that's the character, that DNA piece. That's who you are, when it's all said and done. And so I really watch that. I pay a bunch of attention to that. I think, guys that are inherently just a natural leader or a good teammate, have that good body language. I love it. And I think those guys, you combine that with having the talent level, I think those guys really take off. And then I think too, it's just, does winning, and I get these guys play so many games. I think it's unrealistic for us to say, oh, every game if a guy loses, they should be distraught and angry and all that. I don't think that's realistic, but I do think there's a difference in, you can tell when a guy cares and loves to play versus he's just out there for other reasons. And I want guys that love to play, that they don't necessarily care how their shorts look, how their jersey looks, what shoes they have on. To a certain extent, they worry about, man, I get to compete today. All right, I got a game today. We're about to tip this thing off, and I'm about to put on a show. And I think that's kind of a vibe or kind of an energy more than anything. Just like a gut feeling that I have when I watch a kid or see a kid. I've always kind of been able to tell. Hope I'm right most of the time. I think I have a pretty good ratio with that, but I definitely look at that. It's like, what's my vibe when I watch this kid play? Is my vibe telling me he's a true competitor or just kind of? And I think that for me, that's big. As I want guys that, ratings are great. I get all that. But at the end of the day, I think the other stuff, when I peel it back and really look at a kid and evaluate the body language, the true competitor, how you interact, to me is important, because we're all at this level, you're going to get talented guys. That goes without saying. I tell my staff all the time, like, if you take away transition in AAU and in high school, what does he get done? Because that's what we need to evaluate, that part, and see where we go from there.
Yeah, that's such a great point there about that because obviously it gets harder at the next level to be able to score in those ways. The other part that I'm curious then with that is, like, it's okay to have competitive frustration though, right? Like, in a way, like, we kind of want athletes to want to do better. So with that, how do you assess their improvement from, say, year to year? And does that factor into, hey, this is the type of player for us because he values his development because he showed it over time? I'm curious how that factors in.
No, 100%. We always talk about, you want guys that are going, their game's going in an upward trajectory, right? And that tells me they're still developing. Tells me they're putting time into their game. I love that. When you see a guy make a big jump, to me, that excites me because it tells me that they're living in the gym or there's still room to grow. I think sometimes it's not to people's fault. Some guys, kind of, you could tell that they're really good players, but they might plateau, or there's not that. You watch them from summer to summer or year to year, and you're like, man, he got a little bit better, but you just don't know if there's that huge room for growth versus some guys where you're like, man, I see it down the line. And he might not have it as a junior or senior, so you're still taking a little bit of faith, but you can see it's trending the right way. We want guys that are trending the right way. And a lot of times it is a leap of faith because they're not going to be that finished product. They're not going to be that guy that maybe can come in right away and get you, high level production, but you can see it. And you see that, like, man, if this guy after his freshman year does what he's been doing, his sophomore, junior year, he's going to take off. Those are the type of guys that we want, those development guys and guys that embrace that, but have a big upside.
It's great stuff. And you mentioned style of play. And I know you haven't had a chance yet to be on the court with your roster yet. But what are some things that shape your style of play that you would be communicating to your players right now?
I think the biggest thing is skill, having a high level of skill. I just think that's what this league, if you look at who's been able to sustain success, they've been teams that have had a high level of skill. So guys that can dribble, pass, and shoot is a high premium, especially the ability to shoot. And then I think having high IQ, high feel. Guys that know how to play. I will take a guy that knows how to play over that ridiculous athlete. That's just me. I think that there's a ton of value in guys that play the right way for how we want to play and just have a natural feel of the game, have that natural IQ. To me, that's how you make guys better, because you're making the right play when it's the right play. I think those guys get better, but I think it translates. I think shooting, I don't care at what level, that translates, right? Now it's just finding ways, okay, are you able to get it off? Or how do we run action, or how do we get you those shots? But I think if a guy shoots it, a guy can block shots or rebound, I think for sure those three things, in my opinion, normally always translate. And we always look for that. At the end of the day, it's like, okay, especially if you're looking at a guy that, is missing a little something. If he's either not as athletic, if he maybe doesn't have the length or the size, that I'm okay with that if he has that unique skill that translates. We had a kid, Jordan Murphy, here, who was an unbelievable player. Jordan played the 4 and the 5 and legitimately was 6'5", maybe 6'6". But watching Murph recruiting him, he rebounded the ball at a high level ever since I know him, consistently. And I just told our staff, this will translate. I'm just telling you guys, I know he's undersized, but he's got great length and he has a knack for rebounding the basketball. And coincidentally, it did. And I think we're going to have to do that as a staff at a high premium is evaluate stuff and evaluate guys and see what translates, to our level and to our style.
So you talked about developing skill or recruiting skill and all those different pieces. So where is skill fitting into your practices? Is it fitting in throughout practice? Or are you going to do separate skill sessions? Where does it fit in terms of player development?
So we'll do skill to start as a warm-up every day. And then throughout practice, we'll definitely do fundamental skill breakdowns before we go into, live stuff, whether it's 3-on-3, 4-on-4, 5-on-5. And we'll do that every day, be really consistent with it every day. And then obviously within the rules, we like to do kind of individual workouts throughout the year. And it's not crazy taxing, especially as we get into league play. But, if we can get a guy in the gym for 20, 25 minutes, a couple of days a week extra for some one-on-one time to work on whatever it is, footwork. Maybe if you have a big, it's that skill of being able to pick and pop and just drilling the fundamentals of getting your feet set, the fundamentals of setting or slipping a ball screen and working your feet. For a guard, maybe it's just ball handling for 10 minutes, but if you're doing it 4 or 5 days a week, their handle's going to get a little bit tighter come January, February, March. So I think it's doing it every day in practice, trying to find ways to build it in. It's also recruiting that way with kids that inherently are skilled. It's emphasizing it, and then it's doing a little bit extra. And like I said, that's with an assistant coach, within the rules, within the hours, whether it's 3 or 4 days a week, getting in that 20, 25-minute kind of individual workout throughout the entire year I think just really builds on it. But we have to make it an emphasis as a staff. It can't be just something we talk about, but it's got to be something we implement. And I think, my assistants do a really good job of doing it enough where now the players will buy into it, and it'll just kind of be a natural thing. I'm a huge Miami Heat guy, huge. And I think they do one of the best of just working, and there's no substitute for work. So I try to steal as much from them, just their philosophies of it, of how he even runs the program, from the type of guys they get that are like Miami Heat guys. I think that's our goal. I could see a player and, be like, that's a Miami Heat type of player. Well, they need to say that about Minnesota. That's a Minnesota type of guy, and then we need to work like they do with everything we do that's fundamental and skill.
Well, Coach Spoelstra and the staff and the program down there is a great one to have as a model. And Coach Spoelstra listens to the podcast, so hopefully he'll listen to this episode at some point, probably after this season. But
right.
Excited to hear that. So style of play, skill. So then I'm curious from there, you've had so many influences and so many coaches that you've been influenced by. Then this emphasis on skill, does that then lead you to not decide on your tactics necessarily until after you've gone through this evaluation of skill?
Yeah, 100%. I think, each coach, I have a style that I know I would like to play ideally, but I'm also very cognizant of your roster dictates probably how you're going to play. But we've recruited that way. So I think the way we've recruited and the way I'm comfortable and how I want to play will fit, but I won't know until June when we get our guys here. But I think as this portal comes into play, I think every staff is going to probably look at that. Like, yeah, hey, I might have been this type of coach, but if I can't get those type of players, does it make sense to necessarily fully play that way? And we're going to have to tweak some things. So I do think there's going to be some of that. We got to evaluate what guys can and can't do, their IQ, their feel. Can they play in concepts, which is what I want to do. And if they can, great. And then we'll mold it after that. If they can't, let's see how we got to tweak it. But again, that goes into, what you think recruiting wise, and you got to be able to tackle that.
Is there any, one or two things tactically that right now, this is a must for me because this philosophically aligns for me?
Yeah, shooting. I mean, I think being in the Big East really, and I knew it before, but really opened my eyes because it's a little bit different style than the Big Ten. It's a little bit freer, but, watching whether it's us at Xavier, whether it's Villanova, whether it was Creighton, and I had all those guys scouts, really dissecting how they play and how, for me as a coach, if you got guys that can shoot, especially 1 through 5, that totally changes floor spacing, totally changes the bind you put the defense in, totally changes, what you can run and how you can play. And I think it covers up for a lot of mistakes. Obviously you got to be good defensively, but on the offensive side of the ball, if you got guys that can make an open shot, I just think it changes everything. So that is the biggest thing that we're going to focus in on, whether it's skill development or recruiting or just within our offensive concepts, is floor spacing and finding those guys that can space it with the ability to shoot the ball.
You mentioned Fortune 500 companies in the area. So another part that I think all high school coaches and smaller college coaches can relate to is this piece of dealing with boosters and fundraising and the importance of that. And you talked about it relative to branding and recruiting for your players as well. So can you just give us an impression kind of in your first 30 days or so, some of the things that you've done to be able to raise the profile of the program relative to those things?
I think it's branding. It's so big. It's, not turning down any type of interview, not turning down anytime I can do, whether it's a podcast or you go live on Instagram or you do, a Booster Club Zoom meeting. Anytime I get the opportunity to talk about, our program, I think it only helps. I think it just helps get the brand out there, get our philosophy out there, especially as a first-year head coach that, I can't fall back on a body of work. So I have to sell something. I have to get us out there some way. And I have to paint the picture of what Minnesota basketball is going to be about and is about some way. And for me right now, the best way is to do stuff like this. And so I think it's talking about our brand, talking about our program, talking about me, my philosophy, why I'm excited about this job, why I know we can get it done here as much as possible. and get that out there and have people read it, watch it, see it, I think is very, very important. And I think it helps. Like, I talk to boosters every week. Those people are important to what we're doing, not only because they give money and they help fund and we need those resources, but because at the end of the day, they're fans. And for me and for us, I want that place where we play at Williams Arena to be full. And I need those fans to have the buy-in. And so if I'm able to talk to these people and get buy-in early, well, I tell them, if you like what you're hearing, spread the word, tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell somebody, so that now all of a sudden it's not just a booster club of 50, maybe it's a booster club of 150. And then you're able to grow and build. But I'm confident in our message and how we're going to go about it. And so because of that, I want people to hear it. And I want to get out there as much as possible, because I think what they hear, they're going to like. And if they like it, they're going to embrace it and support it. And at the end of the day, that's what you want. I think if we can fill our arena and get this fan base all about Gopher basketball, that's only going to help us in everything that we do here to try to elevate our program.
Yeah, it's great to hear you talk about that, and the importance of that is obvious, and something that isn't talked about enough in transitions. And we're seeing this a lot with transitions of assistant coaches, say from one program to another as well. So I'm curious if you can just address the best practices or some of the things that happen when a coach transitions from a program. Obviously, Xavier and Coach Steele were ecstatic for you, but talk about that process of leaving a program, because that's got to be hard as well.
It's very hard, for a lot of reasons. I think, there is that security, and I don't know how many guys will really admit it, but, we all want to be head coaches, and I did as much as the next guy, but there is that level of, when you're an assistant, there is a certain amount of security. You're not throwing yourself all the way out there, where now it's like, okay, I just took this job. Like, this is on me now. Like, I can't put this off on other people. And so you're leaving that. You're leaving a system and an environment that's obviously been successful at Xavier. It kind of, runs itself, so to speak, in terms of just the day-to-day operations. There's a comfort level in that, and they've been really, really successful. And then there's a relationship piece. I was there for 3 years and developed a really good relationship with Greg Christopher, the AD, with, Susan Lipnicki, who works in administration, with our staff, Mario Mercurio, Dante Jackson, Jonas Hayes, obviously Travis Steele, Trey Scotty, all these guys you work with for 3 years through the ups and downs. Those are relationships that are special. And then on top of that, you got the players, recruited some guys on that team that I'm really close with. And we had an overall close team. So even the guys I didn't recruit, we still had a great relationship. And so to go away from that, they were happy for me, but it still, from my aspect, wasn't easy because they're just such good people. And because it wasn't something where, I was just dying to get out. Like, it had to have made sense because I was in such a really good situation. So you can't complain about it, because obviously, I'm glad I did it. I'm super pumped. But I do think there's that humanistic part where it's like you're branching off into kind of the unknown a little bit, and you're leaving some quality people behind.
Well, I'm glad you talked about that openly, because it's definitely a part of it that probably people don't talk about enough, that it's not as simple sometimes as just say, oh yeah, yes, I want that job, right? Yeah. Because there's other factors that go into it. Coach, also unique to your situation is the fact that the outgoing coach, Richard Pitino, and you have a great relationship, and obviously you've coached together in that way as well. So kind of unique in that situation. I'm curious if there's been any communication and what type of interaction there's been.
No, Richard's been great. We talk quite often, to be honest. And I'm lucky because, I got a chance to work with him for 5 years, and he actually, opened my eyes to another way how to do it at a high level. And we've had, I'm not taking over a program where they really, where they just haven't had any success at all. I mean, I think he left this in a better situation than when he got it in a lot of areas. Going to multiple tournaments, winning the NIT, recruiting pros, having guys getting drafted, which we hadn't had at Minnesota in forever. They were a top 25 program for a majority of the year. They just had some unfortunate circumstances, and obviously also playing through COVID. So it wasn't a situation where it was just a complete train wreck. So I'm very thankful for that. And I know the hard work he put into building it, and how much he cared about this job and this university and living here and the whole nine. But I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. And there's some things that he does that I've stolen and will do here without a doubt. And he's helped kind of mold my mind. Our personalities are different, but I've learned from his, and I've took a lot of things that I think he's really good at as far as his strengths in coaching, and have trying to kind of change how I am a little bit to grow as a person and a coach. But as far as stuff on the floor, whether it's, different things he did individually with skill workout stuff, I've stolen. He's a great offensive guy. So, style of play, but just the overall, the pressing, that was foreign to me, being able to adapt to a press, why it's important, zone, why it's important, being able to kind of be spontaneous. There is a lot that I'm definitely going to steal, and I'm very fortunate. I'm glad I worked for him, and because he really helped mold me, and I liked it because he was different and had a different approach than what I had normally been brought up and learned under, and it's definitely made me a better coach for sure.
Well, it's been really enjoyable to kind of hear that back and forth, that, he speaks very highly of you and he's genuinely excited for you. And that's great. And that's such a great representation of the profession and professionalism, to be honest, from both of you. And it's really cool to hear.
Rare, I think, especially, I was an assistant here, he could have felt a certain way. I get that. And he honestly hasn't. He's been great. I mean, he's been unbelievable. And, I'm thankful for it, because I know in this business, that's not always the case. And, like I said, I wish him nothing but the best. And I know, he's a big time coach. I mean, he's in a great situation. He's going to kill it. But I'm just thankful that the way he's treated me, because I know he didn't have to, it's really been good.
Coach, it's been really cool to be able to hear a little bit of your philosophy, obviously your values, and then to be able to hear a little bit about this transition, which is moving from assistant to head coach and getting your first opportunity. I'm curious then, how excited are you to coach your first game as a head coach?
Oh, big time. You try not to think about it too much now, because it's only beginning of May, but I think it's going to be pretty cool. I think, it's something that obviously I've been thinking about for a long time, and to be able to do it here with the guys on my staff, with the team we're about to assemble in front of, friends and family in a place that I've grown up attending games at and paying close attention to, and being a part of, I think it's going to be special. So looking forward to it, and hopefully the first one turns out the right way.
Well, coaches, it will be special. And I know after listening to you in this interview, I'm pretty excited for you in Minnesota basketball. And I know more people will be when they listen to the podcast as well. So thanks for sharing the game with us.
No, I appreciate it. Like I said, this is big time. I respect you. I know you do a really good job, and I've loved tuning in and catching the podcast. So I'm humbled to be on it. And, I appreciate your time. And obviously if there's anything that Minnesota basketball or myself can do for you or for anybody else that listens, we're an open book, and I love to learn and to grow. So I look forward to continue to follow you. And I just think, this stuff is big time. So I appreciate you doing this for all coaches that love it like I do and like you do.
Thank you.